Let's get to our first topic of discussion this afternoon. The issues surrounding Dangote's refinery and alleged manipulation of oil prices by international oil companies have continued to generate reactions. Critics argue that IOCs, well, in some cases, might intentionally limit domestic refining capacity to perpetuate dependency on imported petroleum products, thereby maintaining control over prices and profits. That's on one side. Some experts are also advocating for stricter regulatory frameworks to ensure fair pricing, and accountability. I think that's the word to hold here. Accountability and transparency in Nigeria's oil and gas industry. What are these key issues? I have the right person in the house to speak around this. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf, good afternoon. It's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you, Tolu.
I think we need to start with the big story that is everywhere today. Africa's richest man has come out to say by himself, Nigeria's interest rate regime cannot help create growth, cannot help grow the economy. This has comments from everywhere with regards to this. But why did we have to wait until the Dangote? Was it not very clear that the interest rate was really high? And what the CBN has been doing is to try to rein in on inflation. But that seems not to be happening.
Well, it's a kind of policy dilemma. Now, the core mandate of the central bank is to achieve price stability. And the main instruments available to it is the management of interest rates. These are the monetary policy tools, namely the MPR, the monetary policy rates, the cash reserve ratio, and of course the liquidity ratio. And of course, again, we have the OMO, the open market operations. These are the instruments available to the central bank. So if you have an institution whose mandate is to control inflation or stabilize prices, and these are the instruments available to it, it will be very difficult to be too hard on that institution when it begins to deploy that policy. Of course, there are arguments for and against. As we speak, there are some people who believe that the monetary policy instruments have been having some impact, and there are those who believe that it is not having any serious impact. But what is clear in all of this is that the monetary policy regime so far has been creating a lot more challenges for the real sector of the economy. You know, it has been creating a lot more challenges for entrepreneurs in the economy. Both those who are already indebted to the banks and those who are willing to borrow money from the banks. Because the policy rate has pushed the interest rates to almost 30%. And when you look at the economy today, I don't know what business you can do at an interest rate of 30%. So it's as good as saying that businesses or entrepreneurs have no business going to the bank. It's as good as that. And that means that we are disconnecting the banking system from the real economy, which is not a good thing. So the point that Alhaji Aliko Dangote made is a very valid point. Many of us are also of that view that we should not rely too much on monetary policy instruments to deal with this problem of inflation. And in any case, the outcomes has not been so fantastic because as even with all the tightening, you can see that the direction of inflation has been upward. Yes. Even though there's some argument that month-on-month inflation has been decelerating. But on the whole, we haven't seen any concrete outcome. So that is why we believe that we need to look more to the fiscal side, where the government is now beginning to
complement whatever is happening on the monetary
side.
Yes,
to help complement what is happening on the monetary side. Because the biggest factors, in my view, that is driving this inflation are supply-side factors. You know, there are a lot of issues around production, around cost of production, around logistics, so many issues around production. And if you are not able to produce cheaply, it's extremely difficult for you to sell cheaply. So that is why I welcome the idea of what the president is now beginning to do by refocusing now on fiscal policy measures. We are beginning to see some steps taken through the presidential executive order Now we have seen one now for pharmaceutical industries. We are hoping that this will be replicated, to affect other real sectors of the economy. Because to turn around this economy, production is key. There is no alternative to it. And I think that is what we need to do. And that is the point that the Alhaji Dangote was making, that we should do everything possible to support production. Interest rate is one. He also mentioned the issue of power, that it is not possible to industrialize, to produce without power. That is key. You also have the issue of logistics. How do you move your products? How do you move raw materials? How do you move finished goods around the country? And this is a very vast country. So these are the critical bottlenecks that we need to deal with. And I must commend the fact that this manufacturing or manufacturers summit is taking place. Yeah, I must commend the Manufacturers Association. And more importantly, I must commend the administration. Because the fact that the government offered to host it in the State House means a lot to the commitment of government to the issue of production and the issue of manufacturing. So what we will also want to see beyond that is firm action, policy steps, concrete policy steps to now support, production in the economy. And there's a whole range of it that I'm sure will form part of the outcomes of this summit. Practical steps that can be taken. But already, there are some of those recommendations that are likely to come from the Taiwo Yedele Committee, because there's a fiscal policy component, in the reform that is being proposed. And I imagine that quite a lot of it will be in favor of production. Now you are talking about manufacturing, or you are talking about agriculture, you are talking about agro-allied industry, you are talking about construction. There's a whole range of support that we need to give for those who are in the real economy.
It's key, because that is where the jobs would come from. And that moves me to the refinery, to 650,000 barrels per day capacity. Over $20 billion was invested in this facility. And now we expect it to come on stream. And that is when we are now seeing issues of licenses for dirty fuels. We are now seeing crude oil not getting to the facility. Dangote has to get crude oil, source crude oil from other sources. Why are we having these challenges at the point where everyone expects that the so-called or so much talked about Dangote Refinery is about coming on board?
Well, I think this is something that requires the urgent attention of the regulatory authorities and possibly even the presidency. Because this is not even so much about Dangote or Dangote Refinery. This is about the concept of production. Because let us address the principles. If you want to build an economy that is resilient, an economy that can create jobs, an economy that can, withstand whatever kind of external shocks that you may experience, we need to give every support to production activities. And the petroleum sector is a very critical sector. It's very strategic to this endeavor, because if you look at how much we have been spending on the importation of petroleum products over the last couple of years, we'll be talking of between $10 to $15 billion annually. And here we are clamoring for the conservation of foreign exchange. We are concerned about the exchange rate, the volatility of the exchange rate. We are concerned about liquidity in the foreign exchange market. And one of the ways to deal with these issues is to accelerate the process of import substitution. Sure. And import substitution in this context is to substitute what we normally have been importing with what we are producing locally. And if you look at our import bill, importation of petroleum products accounts for close to 30% of our imports. 30. So imagine if we're able to put a stop to that. Imagine the impact of that on our reserves. Imagine the impact of that on our exchange rate, on our stability, even on inflation that we're all complaining about. Because the exchange rate is a major factor in the inflation that we're experiencing. So if you have a major sector, a major investment, Dangote and even other local initiatives to refine petroleum products, I think we need to do everything possible to support those initiatives. And beyond that, there's also the advantage of the fact of backward integration that it will create. Backward integration and forward integration. Now, many of the manufacturing companies, some of their biggest imports are around petrochemical products. Yes. You know, particularly those who are in plastics, those who are in packaging and all of that. Even pharmaceuticals. That's a whole lot, because next to petroleum products, the next highest bin in terms of import is raw materials by industries. And the way to build a resilient economy is also to reduce the level of imports. That is the way it is. All over the world, there's what you call economic nationalism. The experience of COVID has taught us to look inwards and to scale up our domestic production capacity. Because once there is a crisis, everybody will shut their doors. I mean, we saw what happened during COVID. Where even to get vaccine, nobody was willing to sell vaccine to us. Even normal pharmaceuticals, yes. Food products. A lot of people who we thought were our friends, they place an embargo on exports. That's a big lesson that we must learn. So we need to prioritize this economic nationalism, which means looking inwards and protecting what is yours. That is extremely very important. So if we're able to encourage more the growth of our refineries, we're likely to see a lot more production of petrochemical raw materials, which will help to feed our local manufacturing sector. The same thing with fertilizer. The same thing with base oil. So there are so many advantages that this thing will bring beyond the refinery itself. So we should look beyond just looking at the Dangote Refinery or any other refinery for that matter as just a business concern that is aiming just to make profit. We should look at the larger picture, the bigger impact of these investments on the larger economy, the macroeconomic impact, the social impact, you know, the contribution to the economic resilience, self-reliance, less dependence on imports, impact on our foreign reserves. So it's a whole lot of things. So the managers of the economy and even the presidency has to rein in to ensure that you have the right policy framework to ensure the protection of our industries generally, the refineries and other domestic industries. And this issue, you know, was re-echoed at the Manufacturers Summit. They need to protect industries. Yeah. Even the US, which is the bastion of a free market, they protect their industries. Only recently, President Biden had to announce some very high tariffs against Chinese products.
Yes, to promote.
It's just to support their industries. So it's not anything wrong. But if there is any fear about people taking monopoly advantage and all of that, we have the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. That is their job. They are supposed to be on top of it. If there is any exploitation arising from exercise of monopoly powers, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission can step into it. That is their responsibility. But we cannot, in the name of free trade, allow our domestic industries to go down. No. We have suffered a lot in terms of the loss of some of our industries. An investment in manufacturing, operating the manufacturing sector, is one of the most challenging. In the current situation, it's one of the most challenging. So whoever is investing in manufacturing, we must commend them. And we must rally around them and support them to make sure that it survives. Not just for their own sake, but for the sake of the larger economy.
Let's look at the issue of deregulation in its entirety now when we talk about deregulation itself. Looking at the PIA, what is happening at the moment, are we following it to the latter? Talking about implementing the PIA, which is supposed to also allow these free markets and all that. The marketers are still saying they can source products from anywhere they want to source it from.
No. You see, that is the point I was making. There is no economy that you can live completely to free market. If we need to tweak it, the PIA, we have to tweak it. But even if it is going to remain that way, we need fiscal policy measures to protect domestic industries. What I mean by that is that, yes, okay, if you know that we have our domestic refineries, and we know that it is in the interest of this economy for us to spend less on imports, for us to patronize what is produced locally, for us to create more jobs locally. And if in spite of all those noble outcomes, the downstream and midstream regulatory authorities see fit that they can be issuing licenses for people to go and import petroleum products, fine. If that is the law, if you are infringing on any law. But the fiscal policy has to step into it. That is why you have tariffs. If you want to protect industries, you just adjust the tariffs. You adjust the tariffs in a way to protect the industries. That is key. The former CBN governor used some unorthodox method, but looking back now, you can see some of the logic. Because during his time, whatever is produced locally, he will not allow you to access foreign exchange for it.
Yeah, for it.
He will not allow you. You know, although it's unorthodox, the whole system was neither here nor there, but that was the spirit. But the decent way to do it is to ensure that you have a tariff framework that will protect your industries. If you know that you are going to import something that is produced locally, fine. But you must be able to pay a bigger tariff. True. That is what I think. But we cannot afford to submit entirely to free markets. Look at what is happening in Kenya. You know, when we just adopt some of these templates of IMF, World Bank, I mean, you have to relate to your own peculiarities. How do you build an economy that is resilient? We have been clamoring for domestic production of petroleum products. Now we have some very great efforts to produce petroleum, and we are now seeing these elements of people not wanting to support it. Again, let me reiterate. If the fear is about monopoly powers, the FCC PC, that's what it's called, Federal Consumer Protection and Competition Commission, should rise to the occasion to protect both the investors and the consumers and whoever are the stakeholders within the space. But to now expose some of these our industries, in spite of all the challenges they are facing, in spite of all the risk they have taken to put this investment in place, I think it will be most unfair. And if I may even extend it, it will be very unpatriotic. So all necessary support must be given to these refineries to ensure that they are up and running. And the good thing is that the quality of their products are so good that they're even exporting to Europe.
Maybe that's the fear. Something
that is a testament.
Say there could be a lot of exports, even at the end of the day when it becomes fully functional.
Well, it's a very big capacity. Yes. But the products are there.
Exactly.
Why will people leave it and now go and be importing from abroad? I don't think it's a fair thing to do. And the regulatory authority, the downstream and midstream regulatory authority, should also have a second look at its approach to this. This is not purely about legislation. This is also about nationalism. This is also about economic nationalism. This is about job creation. This is about conserving foreign exchange. This is about building an economy that is resilient. This is about creating jobs. You know? So we have to look beyond the fact that, okay, this is just a business concern. This is much bigger than that. And in any case, the government has about 20% shares in that.
Yes, that's also...
I mean, why must a regulatory agency undermine that kind of thing? If there are issues on which there is need for engagement, of course there can be engagement with the management of the refinery, you know, to sort out whatever that needs to be sorted out. Not to set out in a way that gives the impression that there's a deliberate attempt to undermine a major domestic manufacturing concern. And that would be most unfair.
Before I let you go, some has also identified that fact that crude oil, lack of crude oil, the challenge we have with crude oil production is also something that might affect the functionality or functioning of this refinery. Look at what we have, 1,200, 1,300, not even up to OPEC quota. That's one. And now that we have to... So looking at this, what do you also think about the crude oil aspect?
Well, the crude oil aspect is another major part. Because this is a very big refinery. We are talking about 650,000 barrels. So to be able to source crude domestically, given the challenges we are having with crude production, I think will be a big issue. But within the context of what we are producing, you must optimize allocation to domestic refineries, whether it is Dangote, whether it's our modular refineries, all of them that are refining locally, at least must have some preference. Again, we don't know what kind of contracts the IOCs already have with some of their customers or whatever. But again, this is something for the regulatory authorities to look at with this patriotic objective in mind, that as a matter of principle and even as a matter of ideology, we have to commit to domestic production of petroleum products to ensure energy security and to build an economy that is very resilient. That should be at the heart of whatever we are doing. I think that is very key.
I think it's a good way to live it. I must say it, a lot is going on in that market. Diesel, aviation fuel, jet fuel is already coming out of that facility.
Exactly.
And anytime from now, PMS should roll out. And one way or the other, maybe in 2 minutes, some have agreed that there's been an impact on the price of some of these commodities.
No, there's been an impact. Before the production from Dangote Refinery, you know, the cost of aviation fuel was very high. The cost of diesel was getting to 1,007. At the inception of the production, the price of diesel came down, even below 1,002. It had some impact, significant impact. That's even impact on price. We haven't talked about impact, the multiplier effect on the entire economy. And it will continue to grow, you know, and we should encourage what is ours, for goodness sake. Can you think of any foreign investor who can stake this kind of investment in an African country?
EPIS also complain about
it's
something
not possible.
EPIS complain about something like this. When instituted the Nigeria to UK route.
Yes. I mean, no foreign investor can do it. Because by the time they run their country risk analysis, they say, no. This place is a no-go area. But if we now have one of our own that has taken this kind of gargantuan risk, for goodness sake, I think whatever support that needs to be given has to be given within the framework of also fairness, you know, to all the key players in the economy.
Dr. Muda Yusuf, I must thank you so much. It's always good to have you on the program. Chief Executive Officer, Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises. Thank you. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well,